Hello, I'd like to welcome you to the AirSpade Tree Care Essentials webinar. My name is Craig Schoen and I'm the National Sales Manager for AirSpade. I'm very lucky to have Denise Vidash on the line as my tree care expert. Denise, how are you doing today?
Hello, I'm excited to be here and welcome to everyone listening.
Denise, would you like to give everyone a little introduction of your background and why I've invited you on as my kind of tree care expert to help explain the AirSpade applications?
Of course. So I am here obviously because I'm a big fan of the AirSpade products. I am primarily in the nursery grower side of the industry business. But I also sell to landscape contractors across the country. So I utilize this AirSpade in our nursery and on job sites.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you and look forward to having you elaborate a little more on the applications. So the introduction for the webinar, some things we want to achieve is going to be provide background on AirSpade division of Guardair Corporation. We want to learn how AirSpade and our AirVac product line operate. We'll also review some of the safety features for using the AirSpade, and Denise will come in and help people understand the most popular tree care techniques and how to use the AirSpade. And then we'll talk a little bit about generating additional income and basically starting your AirSpade division of your business. So the Guardair Corporation is the owner of AirSpade. We're a privately held company headquartered in Chicopee, Massachusetts, and we manufacture pneumatic tools and accessories. All the products are designed, manufactured, and/or assembled in the U.S., and the Guardair Corporation has been manufacturing the AirSpade product line since 2009. The AirSpade has been around much longer than that and been used by arborists, landscapers, nursery workers for upwards of 20 years. So the AirSpade, as I mentioned, is our brand name. We do make two product lines, the AirSpade and the AirVac. The AirSpade is the primary tool used for the arboriculture industry, and it's compressed air power tool, which fractions and loosens and removes soils around trees without causing any damages to roots. The AirVac is a mobile vacuum unit which we manufacture, which also runs off of compressed air, and this unit will vacuum up and store loosened soil and mulch. This can help in site cleanup, large transplants, or larger applications where you need to remove a lot of soil. So how does the AirSpade work? Voids between soil particles are occupied by air and/or water. So the compressed air, which is generated by a toe-behind air compressor, will power the AirSpade. That air will enter voids and it will expand, which will fracture the soil instantly. Any buried non-porous materials, such as tree roots specifically for the arboriculture industry, metal, plastic, any irrigation lines, low voltage electrical cables, telecommunication lines are going to be safe and unaffected, which is very important. And the AirSpade features a proprietary supersonic nozzle, so it's going to be extremely efficient. It's going to maximize your exit airspeed, and it's going to be tightly focused. So as I mentioned, the AirSpade is powered off of a toe-behind air compressor. We make various nozzles depending on your compressor size, but the most common is our 150 CFM nozzle, which is commonly utilized with a 185 CFM, cubic feet per minute, toe-behind air compressor. The AirSpade 2000 is our primary arborist tool, and it is 5 nozzle sizes. Denise, do you typically have any nozzle sizes that you're using?
I do. I use 3 different sizes here. The 150, which is great for mature trees. I use the 60 for decompaction, and I do have the 225 because it does move more dirt quicker. So I use the 225 with the I actually use two guns with the 225 nozzle on a 350 compressor for trees over 12-inch caliber.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that's a really nice feature of the AirSpade 2000 that you're able to use different nozzle sizes depending on the application. So all the threading's the same. And again, that's our patented supersonic nozzle. We also have a fiberglass barrel with an inner air hose, so it's going to be very ergonomic. It's going to help with thermal insulation. And then we also have a very ergonomic trigger and handle, which features a dead man trigger, which is a great safety point for this unit. All of the units come with a Chicago style coupler, so it'll work with your standard air hose. So a few safety features on the AirSpade I mentioned was the dead man trigger, the thermal insulation, and the ergonomics of it. So I wanted to touch on homemade air lances and the dangers of them. Many people may have used these in the past or tried to make their own, and there's some definite hazards to these products. One, they don't feature the dead man trigger. As I said, the AirSpade features this. Homemade air lances typically have a ball valve. If that ball valve is left open and the air is still flowing through it and the unit is dropped, there's going to be a lot of airflow, a lot of pressure, so that pipe could flail around, cause injuries or damages, so you're definitely going to want to avoid that. Also, the construction of it is not very ergonomic, and there's no thermal insulation, so that pipe could get very hot, could cause burns. Without the nozzle, it's not going to be very efficient. You're going to use much more compressed air, and it's not going to dig as fast. And then obviously there's an electrical insulation hazard with it being metal. As ours is fiberglass, it will offer a degree of protection, versus a straight metal pipe. So you're definitely not going to want to use any homemade air lances anymore. I'll briefly touch on our AirVac product line as I introduced earlier. This is a mobile compressed air vacuum unit. It runs off of a tow behind air compressor, typically the same one the AirSpade runs off of. It's going to effectively suck up soil, dirt, sand, gravel, and muck. It's great for transplants, root collar excavations, trenching or larger projects, and general site cleanup. So it's very efficient. It's got a 4-inch wand, 4-inch hose. It's all aluminum, so it's very compact, easy to maneuver around site. So getting more into the tree care applications and the techniques that the AirSpade is used for, we have a few different main categories here: root collar excavation, root pruning, air tilling, vertical mulching, radial trenching, and bare rooting and transplanting. So as we go through each section, I'll ask Denise to kind of elaborate on her experiences for each and talk a little about how the AirSpade can be used for these. So Denise, root collar excavations are very common with the AirSpade. What have you seen for these applications before?
Yep. I think it's important to note first that it's mandatory to have training and certification when working around trees. They are living and breathing organisms, and their root systems are sensitive and have, very limited cambium layers on them that we need to protect while using this compressed air around them. But I do use this tool for root collar excavation. A lot of the times, trees in the nursery and trees on job sites are planted too deep. So I use this around the root collar to expose the root flare so that the tree can respirate. So the tree can thrive and survive in its planting location. I think we don't need to describe the actual process. We have a short, limited time. But again, it can be taught through training programs that certified professionals on this AirSpade tool can provide, including our company, Retreat.
Great. And I do have a quick little video shot just to kind of explain and show the user what a root collar excavation is. As you can see, they dig around the base of the tree, and then they can properly prune back any of the roots without causing damages during the excavation process. So great to hear that. That's a useful application in your industry, for nurseries as well.
Right, and once you expose that, just like you said, when you expose that root flare, you expose the mystery of what's happening below the surface, and immediate repairs can be made so that that tree can thrive in the future. Otherwise, that tree may continue to decline. So that's where we use this tool for root collar excavation most often.
Okay, great. And at the end of the presentation, we'll have all our information so people can reach out for more specific information for any of these applications. So getting into root pruning, I guess this would probably be part of a root collar excavation. Can you explain a little bit about what the AirSpade can utilize in the root pruning sector?
So we use this around driveways, obviously, that the roots are becoming invasive to the asphalt or the cement. Also around utilities, when we're working around utilities and roots, and we're trying to protect the root system, we use this to trench around the roots. And then if these roots are becoming invasive to anything, including homes or how they can be, we can cut them clean so that they can produce a fibrous root after that clean cut is made. So,
and I'd say that image up in the top corner really illustrates the powers of the AirSpade and how it can help keep the roots safe, but obviously excavate for any utility infrastructure, because a shovel or any machinery would dig out all those roots. But as you can see, they've exposed them and ran the infrastructure through the root system without causing any damages. So really important feature.
It really protects the integrity of the tree.
So that's great to know that an arborist might be able to partner with a contractor, utility professional to help with some projects to keep trees safe.
Yes. I think we see that often, with on construction sites where they're excavating around trees and ripping the roots right out of the ground. And I think this tool could be used and suggested a lot more often in those cases.
We're starting to have more and more customers reach out for those type of situations. So it's good to see that there's more of an emphasis on construction sites to help keep the roots safe. And as far as decompaction goes, a lot of times on construction sites, the tree roots suffer some severe decompaction. So getting into a few of the next applications, they're going to help with that decompaction issue. Do you have any experience with air tilling as far as decompacting for trees?
I have not. I have not used this method, so I'm not very familiar with this. So you can speak on this. I will speak on the one that I use most often.
Okay. Yeah, there's a few different applications for decompaction. So as Denise said, she doesn't typically use this one. Some people may. This is basically going to be doing a radius around trees and fluffing up any of the material. Usually if it's sod, you're going to want to try to remove it. Just going to make for an easier process. Even mulch, you'll want to peel back that a little bit. So you use the AirSpade to till up the soil in a circular and linear pattern. And you typically want to be about 6 to 12 inches deep to help provide, soil augmentation for that decompaction. So it's just going to increase some root development and lead to overall tree health. But again, there's multiple ways to decompact. So Denise can talk a little bit about some of her experiences. I know you do a lot of vertical mulching, right?
Yes. Any method that you use for decompaction is going to be beneficial to the tree. So no matter which method you use, it's important to note that. I use vertical mulching because it's the least invasive to the area that you are decompacting in. So most often, I use this on residential home sites. This is actually a method that blows air pockets into the soil to allow that tree.
And I have a video I can show too.
To continue to breathe and grow, we blow this air down into the soil. So it breaks up the soil. It allows that tree to expand and breathe. I use it in the root impact zone, but I also use it outside the drip line zone, because those trees, if the soil is decompacted at the drip line, that tree doesn't allow that tree to produce more fibrous roots. So you want that tree to continue to grow outwards. So we use that tool also outside of the root impact zone as well. So, and then
are you using a specific nozzle size typically?
The 60, I think that it creates a lot less mess using the 60. And you don't need the 150 or the 225 most often, unless you're in really, really heavy clay.
Great. And then as you saw in the video, are you backfilling these little holes with any specific material? We can play the video one more time.
Yep, with mulch or just any type of fluffy soil would work. Composted fluffy soil will work in there. Just something that the tree can continue to respirate, right? So that the oxygen is reaching into the ground through these different vertical mulched holes.
And after watching the video, this looks like it'd be a good application for someone who wants to aerate their trees. But as you mentioned before, it seems like it's, if they have a yard around it or some type of landscaped area, it seems like it's gonna, cause less harm to those parts of the landscape as well.
Less of a mess, for sure. So this, again, can be used, or I would recommend it be used on residential sites. Now, if you're working on a commercial site, I think you can use a lot more aggressive, invasive type of decompaction, which you'll get into on the next slide.
Yeah, one of those being radial trenching. I definitely have seen this with a lot more of our commercial customers, more universities, parks, municipalities. Maybe if there's a concert or some type of event and cars are, physically driving over and parking on the routes. Again, I'll play a small video clip so people can visually understand it. Have you worked with any of these radial trenching techniques, Denise?
I don't use this very often because it does create a lot more mess than the vertical mulching. But I have used it on a few commercial sites because it is more aggressive. But you're left with more of a mess, and those trenches, right? You still backfill with a fluffy soil, so it might be even hazardous or a liability, right? If you have a lot of people walking around that area.
So this seems like a technique that might be used for, say a larger historic tree versus, a dozen, smaller trees on a residential site. Would that be a safe assumption?
Correct. And you may even have to put up, safety fencing, right, for the immediate future. Just because of those large trenches, you wouldn't want anybody falling in them or walking in them. But it's very
And that
healthy.
brings up a good point. It's important to note the safety and the hazards while using the AirSpade. Could you tell the viewers a little bit about what you physically wear for AirSpade PPE and how you set your job sites up to be able to protect against any damages or injuries to these surrounding areas on your site?
Yes, my crew wears the Tyvek suits from Uline just to protect their clothing. And then we do ear protection and full face shields and helmets, just because you don't know what you're going to run into with, underneath the surface, rocks are flying, soil. It's just, and sometimes we'll even use respirators, just if there's a lot of dust and debris flying in the air. So.
And then obviously on the job site, pieces of plywood, mesh fencing, as Denise said, safety barriers or tape to make sure people aren't going in a certain radius around the site. You definitely want to be able to evaluate where you're working before any excavation starting to make sure there's no buildings or windows or vehicles in the immediate area. Again, we just want to make sure that no damages are caused by a flying piece of debris or any injury to any onlooker. So it's definitely important to survey and be aware of your surroundings. And then, as Denise also mentioned, wearing the proper PPE to protect yourself and your crews.
Correct.
And I know the next section you're the expert and the master on, so I'll have to reel you in a little bit, and I'll give you a couple minutes to talk about bare rooting and transplanting. But the AirSpade is definitely a very important tool for these projects, and you're using it a lot, correct?
Yes, definitely not the expert, but I've done some large tree transplanting, successful large tree transplanting with this tool. Again, like I said, I'm in the nursery business, so I use conventional spades in my tree fields. But for on-site transplanting, and sometimes we do move these trees down the road bare root, I think that this is the most successful way to move a tree if you have the application to do so. We dig these, or we AirSpade these trees at a 15-to-1 ratio. So conventional B&B trees come in a 10-to-1 nursery standard ratio. So we're getting 85% of the root system out of the ground when we're using this AirSpade tool. So ultimately, the benefits to that tree are beyond. The tree rarely has any transplant shock because we're not disrupting the transfer of energy between the canopy and the root system. It's also very convenient because we can use this AirSpade while the trees are in full leaf in the middle of the summer, while most often we cannot dig a tree B&B in full leaf because of the transplant shock. So this requires a tremendous amount of training, but I think it's very useful on construction sites for contractors to learn and utilize and be able to move trees around their site as opposed to cutting them down. So I've seen such success with this tool and in my nursery moving big trees. So I would suggest they do the training and use this in the future.
Yeah, and this is obviously an application. It's going to take years of experience and training, and it's not something that can be done overnight, but it's certainly something that people can build up to and work towards. Do you have any recommendations as far as someone looking to learn more about bare rooting and transplanting, where they should kind of start?
Yes, actually, we, depending on where they are located, we do trainings for the Midwest. So we host them in Michigan. All are welcome, but most of the time, contractors within the Midwest come to those trainings. I do have relationships across the country with AirSpade professionals, so they can reach out to me or you so that we can provide them with those particular companies who do that training. But it's a value-added service that you can provide to your clients that may be very innovative and unique to what your competition is doing, right? So
I know we're seeing more transplants in university, corporate settings, areas where there's more of an emphasis on keeping the trees. So it's great to see that we have that ability with the AirSpade. One thing to note
is, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
There's so much opportunity, like you said, on universities, but think about the golf courses and corporate campuses where trees are outgrowing their location or they're doing new construction. You can provide this value added service to those applications. So, great thing.
Well, we appreciate the insight on the applications and really thankful for your expertise with those. If people want to learn more specifically about each application, we do have a great technical applications bulletin. So it's a guide that was developed by professional arborists, and it really is great because it has details on each of these specifications and recommendations. There's some great blueprints and charts, which once you get into airspading will really help you sell the work as well, because then you can visually show your customers what type of application you're doing and how it's going to affect the health of the tree. So this guide can be found at airspade.com/guide. And then if you reach out to me after, I'm always happy to mail you some out if you want a physical copy of it as well. But this can be a great resource, not only to learn more, but to help with continuing education and selling the work. So getting a little bit into the business plan itself for creating an AirSpade division of your company. As we've stressed throughout this webinar, it's very important to become trained, educated, so you're performing quality work and you're helping the trees. You don't want to be uncovering things, pruning things, and causing damages. You want to do it properly so that your service is positive experience for the tree and your customer. So some great things about doing AirSpade work is it's going to help increase your customer base. You can help appeal to higher end customers and commercial accounts. And then the AirSpade work can lead to other work as well, more prunings, mulchings, tree removals. So it can be a very attractive return on your investment. Before you start, you're definitely going to want to map out a business plan for AirSpade work. It's far different from any other tree work, so you need to know the true expenses of your equipment and labor cost. You're going to want to learn and work with others to educate yourself on estimating the project scope so you can know that your customer base is getting a true estimate and you're covering your expenses and you're making some money on the projects. So you're going to need to either invest or rent a compressor for the AirSpade to be powered. And you're always going to want to plan around any homeowner concerns. Are they concerned about their grass or existing landscaping, or do they have irrigation systems? And then create a radius for your work. Know that your travel time and your time to get compressors or rental equipment is going to be charged to the job. And then, try to upsell, say, oh, these trees also could use some pruning, or, maybe we have a small tree like transplant, and look for other opportunities on site as well. So we have a few examples for specific jobs and rates. Again, these are just examples. They could vary drastically. If you're working in New York City or, working in Texas or in a country setting, there's a very, very big range for what you can charge, but we give this just as an example to see if it's something that, interests you in getting involved in. So typical arborist rates could be $90 to $175 an hour. An air compressor, depending on when you get it, could be $150 to $225, and then you need to make sure you're charging for your mulches, your soil amendments, and then, as I said, your travel and whatnot. So you need to break down each category, what your cost is, and what you're marking that up for to be able to charge to your customer. So we have two examples This is for one project, which could be a couple of large trees with, say, a larger radius, maybe some air tilling and root collar excavation. This project would require an arborist and then a landscape laborer, about 8 hours of work with your material, such as your AirSpade and your compressor rental, your mulch, and your soil amendments, and then your travel on top of that. A project like this could be around $2,000. An important thing to note is that you're always going to want to establish a minimum job charge. So the next example could be an example of your minimum. You're not basically going to go out for anything less than this. This could be one small tree with a small radius. You're checking for girdling roots, doing a little pruning, and a general site inspection for other work that might be done. This is going to be one arborist, maybe about 2 hours. And with your expenses in there, your minimum baseline charge is going to be about $535. And again, these are all examples. It's going to vary depending on your region and where you're working. Denise, do you have anything else, in closing before we, end the webinar today?
Yeah, I find to that point about a minimum, right, that you would charge to go to a job site. I find most often that you get on site and you end up selling a lot more work, right? So I would just plan on that. And also, I would describe those services that you provide after training on your website. I've done that on my site. If anybody wants to go check it out, I've described it in detail so that the client understands the benefits of using this AirSpade technology and not just the conventional way of doing things, which is over fertilizing, because that's how we've been programmed, right? We've just been programmed to continue to fertilize, which sometimes exasperates the root girdling and things of that sort that are going on below the surface. So,
yeah, and I know from a lot of the jobs I've been on, the AirSpade work basically turns into a lot of repeat business because people are very happy typically with the results, the tree health coming back. So expect a lot of repeat calls and, people having you come back on site for other trees after the initial work.
Yeah. My other takeaway for our listeners is we talked a lot about making sure you have the proper training, and I had a really great mentor, a pioneer of this AirSpade technology, Matt Fody. I want to mention him because he's taught me a lot. And he also mentioned something early on that really resonated with me about this tool, that if you take a walk through nature and notice what's going on in nature and how the roots grow on top of, and the root flare grows in nature exposed, and what's happening out there, and try our best to mimic that, I think we will have the best results. So this AirSpade technology really supports that mimicking of nature, I guess, is my closing statement.
Oh, that's great. Well, we really appreciate having you on the webinar and look forward to, working with others on this. The last thing I'll say is that this industry is really good, and what I like about working in it so much is just the overall community aspect of it. Even if you may be a competitor with someone in the neighboring town, arborists and tree care professionals work really well with each other and love to share information and support each other. So as Denise said, she had someone kind of show her the way and let her learn from them, even as they may have been a competitor. So I would definitely suggest reaching out to people within your network, asking them if they're doing AirSpade work, try to learn from them, and then obviously invest in yourself. Try to, get involved in some trainings and some seminars on this to help better your brand and give your customer base, more product to need from you. So we really appreciate everyone watching the webinar. Feel free to reach out to me directly for questions. Denise's information is here as well, so she can help with any trainings or maybe recommendations for trainings if it's not in her direct area. But again, thank you very much. We look forward to helping everyone grow their business. And again, thanks so much, Denise. We really appreciate you helping us out with this.
No problem. Everyone have a great day.
Same to you. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.